What Really Happened with your host, Mike Rivero. The history the government hopes you'll never learn. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It is Friday, January 18th, 2019. Thank goodness it's Friday. Thank goodness it's Friday. Thank goodness it's Friday. And I'm feeling a little better than I did yesterday. I'm still dealing with this bug, and I'm glad it's the weekend. Anyway, we've got a lot to talk about today. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Sam is in our control room ready to answer the phone, put you on the air with your comments and questions. A little bit of a program note. This radio show is only going to be live for the first 2 hours because I have to take Claire to the doctor. We can't move the appointment, and I'm her Uber. So third hour, Sam's picked out a really good best of tape he's going to play for you. But we are here live for 2 hours, and so feel free to call on in and chit-chat. Now then, before we get into the serious news, for all you space buffs, of which I am one, there is a major lunar eclipse taking place Sunday night to Monday morning. And it is ideally positioned for people on the continental United States, or for that matter, South America, to see. And it's going to be a very long eclipse. Totality is actually going to last like an hour, which is unprecedented. And it's also a supermoon, meaning the moon is at the closest point in its orbit to Earth. So it's going to be an interesting little sight. So if you are on Pacific Coast time, then the eclipse begins at 7:33 p.m. and it ends at 10:50 p.m. If you're on Mountain Time, obviously it's 8:33 start, 11:50 end. If you're on Central Standard Time, it's at 9:33 is when it starts in the evening, and it ends at 12:50 a.m. the next morning. For people on Eastern Time, obviously it starts at 10:33 and ends at 1:50 in the morning the next day. Here in Hawaii, it's going to be already in totality as the moon is rising here. So we'll get to see part of it, not all of it here. All right, as long as we're talking space, the return of Star Wars. And for those of you who are a little young to understand, there's a reference there besides George Lucasfilm franchise, and it had to do with Ronald Reagan's Strategic Defense Initiative, in which they borrowed and spent fantastic sums of money to try and build a ballistic missile shield for the entire United States. And it was a boondoggle. Not much of any real practical use came out of it. But Donald Trump is getting ready to try again with a space-based missile defense system. So Trump announced this yesterday at the Pentagon, and he set out his goals, saying he wants to ensure we can detect and destroy any missile launched against the United States anywhere, anytime, any place, which sounds really good. Now, a space-based missile defense system actually violates treaties against the weaponization of space, but Trump is out there saying the U.S. is ready to quit all treaties and will make militarization of space inevitable. Now, I disagree with this. Obviously, space-based sensors to detect missile launch are a good idea, and they were part of Reagan's Strategic Defense Initiative. There was the boost stage detection satellites, the coast stage detection satellites, and just a whole network of these things orbiting the Earth, or that was going to be the plan here. But again, as I've mentioned before, my concern about the militarization of space is if we start shooting each other's satellites, they're going to break into pieces. And unlike an air war down here close to the ground, where the pieces fall to the ground and that's it, those pieces of space debris will stay, for the most part, in orbit. Some will fall into the atmosphere, some will go into very erratic orbits, but most of them are just going to stay in some kind of an orbit up there at near-Earth space, where they form shrapnel and represent a risk to other satellites, including non-military ones. and you could start a cascade function where you have one satellite gets destroyed, it sends out a bunch of shrapnel. That in turn destroys 2 more satellites. They send out their shrapnel. Those destroy 4 satellites, and so forth and so on. You can see where I'm going with this. So I think this is a really, really bad idea. And I'm not the only one. Daniel Ellsberg is out there saying that he doesn't think it can work, and it's going to make a nuclear Armageddon more likely, and he described it basically as a dangerous lunacy. But Trump wants to have his Space Force, and I understand they're already setting up the command structure for it, but it's a Space Force without much in the way of actual technology. Over at the Arms Control Association, they're describing this plan as a threat to global nuclear deterrence. And they're saying that the U.S. should concentrate on negotiating strategic stability with Russia and China, such as go back to the INF and mutual inspections. We don't have the money to spend on building a whole new fleet of nuclear weapons. Neither does Russia, neither does China. So pretty much everybody except the military-industrial complex seems to think that this is a bad idea. Ron Paul came on out and said, yeah, somebody's going to make money by stoking fear. Oh, be afraid of Russia. Be afraid of China. We need more of your money to put weapons in space. We don't need weapons in space. We don't even need 800 military bases around the world. We don't even need an Army, Navy, Air Force, or Marines. We need the Coast Guards for the smugglers. Don't forget, we have the world's second largest nuclear arsenal, 6,550 nuclear warheads. No nation is going to attack the United States. They know what the inevitable result would be. Their country would get slagged down. They know it. We know it. If the Defense Department's real purpose is defense, pardon me, then that's all we need. Rely on that nuclear deterrent. Rely on the existing warheads. We don't need any new ones. And just say, we're going to mind our business. You mind yours. Anybody who tries to attack the United States of America, we vaporize their home country. Period. End of story. Instead, we have the situation of, we've got all these weapons, but we're not going to use them, and we're going to send other people's children with conventional weapons into other countries to mess around with them. Which brings me to Syria. Units of the Syrian military forces, the Tiger forces, are reinforcing their positions in northwestern Hama. They're being deployed on a front line near the militant-held town of Khalat el-Madik in northwestern Hama. And this may be signaling an upcoming offensive in the area. Now, apparently, Turkish President Erdogan and his Russian counterpart, Vladimir Putin, are set to meet in Moscow on the 23rd of this month. And it's believed that they will discuss the situation in Idlib, among other issues, and possibly look at some kind of a new way to reinforce the failed demilitarized zone agreement during that meeting. So I'm glad somebody's talking to somebody here. Now, there was an interesting article that came on out from FFF.org, and it's basically lambasting Donald Trump for that nighttime trip to Iraq over Christmas. And I'm sure a lot of people agreed with me that it was great for Trump to go see the troops and give the troops a chance to see him and help build their morale. But he sort of basically snuck in and snuck out. And there's an interesting statistic that you need to keep in mind. We've been talking about how the United States has been in Afghanistan for 17 years. It's America's second longest war outside of Korea, which is still technically on. We've been in Iraq for 15 years now. 15 years. The Iraqi people want us gone. The Iraqi government wants us gone. It's turned into a real circus over there. Another article, this one out of nationalinterest.org. Israel is going to have to accept that the U.S. will no longer police the Middle East. And they start by commenting on President Trump's decision to pull out 2,000 American soldiers from Syria and another amount of soldiers from Afghanistan. Of course, he's being fought by elements of the deep state like Mike Pompeo and John Bolton, but he may still put his foot down. Now, of course, everybody's out there saying the Americans have betrayed the Kurds, and that represents a win for Iran and a victory for Russia, a victory for Syria, and utter chaos in the Middle East. But the United States has spent a lot of years and a lot of money maintaining hegemonic domination over the Middle East for the benefit of Israel, which is constantly saying, you know, we're under threat, existential threat from our neighbors. But again, Israel has nuclear weapons. They don't have as many as the United States does, but no country in the Middle East is going to attack or invade Israel, because Israel would simply uncork on them with a big bomb. That's the way to have peace in the world. Shut down all the armies, all the navies, all the air forces, you know, have civil law enforcement, go after the drug dealers and smugglers and so forth and that kind of stuff, and just every country gets 1,000 nuclear warheads. And everybody's afraid to attack everybody else. Doesn't that sound like it's going to work a lot better than the system we have right now? Speaking of Israel, there is this ongoing war on the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement. And I think the U.S. Senate, the new U.S. Senate, sort of showed what a high priority Israel has become. The very first bill they passed, or tried to pass, it's actually failed 3 votes now, was a bill to not only give Israel a lot more money, but to outlaw boycott, divestment, and sanctions in this country. This is clearly unconstitutional. Under Marbury versus Madison, it's a non-law. And I do wish that somebody would take one of these cases up to the Supreme Court, because as of right now, 26 U.S. states, more than half, have already passed legislation or some form of condemnation of the civil act of boycott as championed in the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement. And that should show you the scale of Israel's influence on the United States. 26 states. Somebody's got to take one of those bills to the Supreme Court. It'll get struck down. It's a clear violation of the First Amendment right to freedom of speech. Why is Israel doing this right now? Well, because, frankly, BDS is getting out there. Activism by Palestinian Americans and their allies is bearing fruit. Israel's no longer able to just dehumanize Palestinians and make the world believe they deserve the way they're being treated. The tide is shifting. And that's why Israel is desperate to shut the discussion down. All right, we're going to take a phone call here. Dustin in New Jersey, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Mike, not only is Israel making everybody, like the Palestinians, to be lesser, but we do the same thing. So does the French and the British. I mean, the French, oh, we're going to stay in Syria. They're not even invited over there. You know? I mean, they just, Mike, I voted for Trump. I'm a Democrat. Well, I'm under I don't like the Democrats, but I like some, universal health care and this or that's better than building bombs, right?
Yes.
But I mean, what Trump did, like with Iraq when he went to see the troops, that was a good thing to see the troops. But he didn't tell the Iraqi government he was. I mean, like, if somebody woke up at 2 o'clock in the morning to go get something to eat in their kitchen, and they turn on the lights and they look at what's your relatives doing in the living room, you can't. This is an arrogance. You know what I mean? It's Iraq's country. You can't just.
I think the reason that Trump didn't inform the Iraqi government was on the off chance that somebody in the Iraqi military might take a shot at him as he come in or go out.
Yeah, but I mean, it comes a time, like you said, we've been in Iraq how long? And
15 years.
Afghanistan. Yeah, and Afghanistan, what, 17 years?
Yes.
For what? For what? Like, what? Is there an end game? You know what I mean? Like, what's the purpose? There is no purpose, because the purpose is just to keep it destabilized. It's an empire of garrisons, and eventually you're going to have to leave. I think Trump partially knows that, because it's bleeding you money, in the long run.
Yes.
But Mike, I looked at also like Nancy Pelosi with Trump, where he canceled the Air Force trip for her. She just got off a vacation in Hawaii, where you're at. She comes home and ready to take another trip to Brussels, Belgium, right? Egypt
and Afghanistan.
To say hi to the troops. Do you think she really cares about the troops? He was going on another vacation to meet with the other elite over there.
Yes.
That's. I mean, what a. She can't stay back to do any deals with the wall or the government shutdown. She's got to travel to get out of Washington, because that's how these people live, Mike. I mean, she's showing how they live. That's it, right? I mean, they don't care about us.
No, they don't. They see themselves as more equal than others. And you're absolutely right. There's a lot of congressional travel going on. But Donald Trump has basically said, until the shutdown is over, no more government-sponsored flights on military planes. And he pointedly told Nancy Pelosi, if you feel you must go, fly commercial. And Pelosi has enough money to fly commercial. I mean, she's worth something like $190 million. But it's just part of this very childish counterpunch that's going on Capitol Hill, where Nancy Pelosi is trying to basically get Donald Trump to delay the State of the Union or call it off or submit it in writing. And this was Trump's rebuttal, if you will.
And you know what's funny, Mike? Like, you look at the rank and file people, like, our government's bloated by about, 95%, right? I mean, come on.
Something like that.
I mean, I feel bad for the people working for the government, like, for the lower echelon. I mean, they don't all get paid $100,000 a year. I mean, you got lower tier government workers and this or that. But, I mean, it is over bloated. It's basically a welfare state for the government. That's what it is. Isn't there more government workers than we got manufacturing in this country?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I heard a statistic somewhere that 1 out of every 4 Americans is involved with government at some level, whether it's city government, county government, state government, or national government, that somehow or other they're tangled up with government. 1 out of 4. That is a management of 25%. And anybody who will tell you that successful businesses usually have no more than 10% of the workforce in management roles. So we're definitely management heavy. And by the way, even those lower tier workers in the federal government, they're still making about 1.5 times what people doing the exact same job in the private sector are making. Plus people in the private sector can be fired if they're not producing.
It's just, Mike, it's just come down to, it's just a corrupt cesspool of unfixable. It's just, I mean, as just a thinking person, it's unfixable at this point. Where do you start and where do you end? It's a broken system that is just eating itself up. That's it at this point.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's why I'm saying our best strategy right now is just be patient and stay calm, because it is tearing itself apart. And I think we're going to be looking at a Soviet Union style collapse somewhere down the road. Could even happen this year. Anyway, listen.
Okay, Mike, have a good rest of the show.
All right. Thanks an awful lot. We got to take a break for commercials, and we will be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're going to go back to the phones to Glenn in Philadelphia. Aloha, Glenn. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. If you remember the 1967 James Bond movie, You Only Live Twice, with Sean Connery,
yes.
You probably remember the plot that an American and a Soviet spaceship were both of them were gobbled up in space by a larger spaceship run by the bad guy. I forget
yes.
what the bad guy was. But that technology actually now exists. It was developed as in a collaboration between Waste Management and Dyson. It's called NEOS, for Near Earth Orbital Satellite Sucker. And they want to deploy this specifically to go up and gobble up all those little astronaut gloves and little bits of junk and pesky spy satellites from other countries, and they gobble them up. The only problem, the real sticking point right now, is that if it's being Waste Management involved, anyone involved is going to have to be with the Teamsters Union, and the union dues are out of this world.
Yes, I know.
So basically, this is going to end up being a very useful thing. I mean, they can bring satellites back down for repair and redeploy them and all that, and scoop up all the junk. And then if somebody just gets a little edgy and uses an anti-satellite missile to blow something up, they get paid big money to go up there and scoop up all the debris and make it safe for astronauts to transit to and from the International Space Station, all that good stuff.
Well, it sounds really good, and there have been a lot of proposals for space junk collection here. It's going to be hideously expensive on the scale of the space shuttle program, because let's say that you grab 5 pieces of space debris. That also involves one launch and one return to Earth, and there's a lot of debris up there. It's also
right.
When you talk about a satellite coming apart, the debris isn't all just sitting there like it would be floating on the ocean when a ship sinks. It scatters very rapidly, and the real issue that you're dealing with are crossing orbits, because there's a lot of the debris are in high inclination orbits that are precessing, and they can basically be thousands of miles an hour as they cross your orbit, and that's going to take a really big catcher's mitt to slow down and grab.
Right, exactly. They have to use like asbestos nets and stuff, so they can make it back through the friction of the atmosphere coming back, But unfortunately, things that's not as easily done as all that. But just the danger of the debris already up there is enough, and then anybody starts blowing things up, and as you say, it wouldn't be long before it would put an end to all space travel, near Earth and otherwise.
Yeah.
But anyway. All righty, Mike. That's about it.
All right. Thanks an awful lot. Yeah, the problem is a lot of that space debris is simply too small to be tracked. NORAD tracks the larger space debris from here on Earth. Pardon me. But there's stuff up there that's very small. Flecks of paint, screws that have come off spacecraft, the astronaut's glove, and of course these days, again because of treaty, all satellites have to include a means to deorbit and come on down. We had one come on down just south of Maui here about a couple of months ago. But there's a lot of stuff up there from before that treaty was signed, and it's dead, it's non-functioning, it's just sitting there, and it's making a mess of the place. And, it's sort of like that Pacific garbage patch. The stuff is very, very far apart, but taken all together, it is starting to cause a great deal of concern. Again, because it's all whizzing around so fast. All right, let's take, I'm going to leave this next phone call off until after we come back from the next commercial break here. Getting on down to Israel, Israeli forces are still using excessive force against peaceful protesters in the Gaza Strip. Apparently, a woman and a child were killed during the 42nd week of the Return and Breaking the Siege March. 143 civilians, including 34 children, 3 women, 3 journalists, and 3 paramedics, were wounded. 3 of them seriously wounded. And apparently in the Gaza Strip, the Israeli forces killed Amal al-Termasa, 44 years old. She was hit with a bullet to the head. At the time she was shot, she was 200 meters away from the border fence between Gaza Strip and Israel. So it doesn't look like she was even part of the protests. Just got hit there. Little factoid, the poverty rate in Gaza now exceeds 80%. And the General Federation of Palestinian Trade Unions is warning both poverty and unemployment rates have reached unprecedented levels in the Gaza Strip because of the economic strangulation. Israel's Security Minister Gilad Erdan is asking for the international observers to be expelled from Hebron. He's out there saying they're clearly not neutral, they're hostile to Israel. They complain about everything that we do. Okay, we got to take a break for commercials. We got a caller waiting on the line, and we will be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Here we're going to go back to the phones to Lenny in California. Aloha, Lenny. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, I want to talk about the hypocrisy of Pelosi. And after she subliminally suggested that Trump cancel the State of the Union address, she had a little press conference and stood before the cameras and the mics and smirked about how she hadn't heard from Trump and how usually his Twitter account was so busy. She actually stood there and smirked about that. But I like what he did, and waiting right before they were about to board the plane, and then he dropped the hammer on them. Okay, that's what I call a grown man move. I guess it's safe to say he won't be getting off in any Gillette commercials.
I think the only person who liked that Gillette commercial was Stephen Colbert. What was really interesting was apparently these congressmen were on their way to the airfield in a chartered bus, and they had to just turn around and come back when the word came on down. Nope, that military plane is not going to take you anywhere.
Yeah, and here's the other thing. Talking about, she was saying how there would not be enough security to keep everybody safe at the so-called State of the Union address. Guess what she did? She not only had security to go with her to Brussels on a vacation, then to Egypt, and then to Afghanistan to make herself to really upstage Trump after Trump went to Iraq. Okay, she hired extra security to go with her, which would have cost more than what it would have cost to cover the State of the Union. Okay. Now, as far as Lindsey Graham and the likes of him, you know, trying to power Trump's what I call intestinal fortitude down and saying, "Oh, we need to stop this sophomore tit for tat kind of moves." I got one thing to say to Pelosi, and I'm saying this with pun intended. Hey, tit, meet tat. That's all I got to say, Mike. Thanks.
All right. Thanks an awful lot, Lenny. And the Department of Homeland Security and the FBI and the Secret Service have already come on out saying it's utterly ridiculous to say that the State of the Union speech is in any kind of security danger, unless there's an inside job, which is always possible here. Okay, the phone lines are now open. There we go. Getting on back to Israel, apparently Israel's Attorney General Avichai Mendelblit will meet with Prime Minister Netanyahu's lawyer to discuss Netanyahu's request that Mendelblit not make any decision in the cases against him prior to April's election. Now, reading between the lines here, it sounds like Netanyahu knows he's about to be charged, and he just wants to avoid not having it out there before the election. But this is almost as good. I mean, depending upon whether the Israeli media is reporting on this or not, people are going to say, oh, he's sounding like he actually did something that he thinks he can be indicted for here. Story coming out of USA Today, and USA Today, of course, is, rah-rah for the war agenda here. And they're talking about this Pentagon report released yesterday, describing North Korea's missile and nuclear program as an extraordinary threat to the United States, and the U.S. must remain vigilant despite ongoing diplomatic engagement. Okay, same logic applies. How is North Korea a threat to the U.S.? The U.S. has 6,550 nuclear warheads. The only country with more nuclear warheads than the United States is Russia, and that's just by a slim margin. If North Korea were to attack the United States, the result would be obliteration for North Korea, and the North Koreans are smart enough to know that. This is all fear-mongering on the part of the Pentagon to get you to go along with more military spending, more toys for the military. By the way, completely tangential, I was watching the educational channels last night, and let's see, there was a show on talking about bird strikes, and it started out with the miracle on the Hudson, which we all know was an absolutely heroic case there, talking about the very real problem of bird strikes and the fact that it does happen a lot more than people know. Obviously, the aviation industry doesn't want you to know that it's a problem, but they did an interesting little statistic that military aviation accounts for only 6% of all the aircraft in the sky, but is responsible for 1/3 of the bird strikes, because they like to fly low down and very, very fast. And they had some rather spectacular video as well. Apparently, it's when you're in takeoff or landing, bird strikes are possible. And for the commercial jetliners, once they're up there, 30,000 feet, 35,000 feet, they're not going to find any birds up there. But it was an interesting statistic here. Okay, story out of, again, a newly released Pentagon unclassified intelligence report created by the Defense Intelligence Agency is warning that China is making rapid advances in military technology and that they already lead the world in key weapons areas. They're on the cutting edge. Remember all this talk they had a few months ago about, oh, China's trying to steal our military secrets. China doesn't need them. Okay. Well, over in the House of Representatives, they passed a resolution, actually an amendment, that specifically says, we deny funding to a border wall. The amendment passed 230 to 197. What was interesting was that 8 House Democrats voted against it. So Pelosi is losing a lock on her leadership position. And apparently the Democrats who voted against it are New York Democratic Representative Anthony Brindisi, South Carolina Democratic Representative Joe Cunningham, Oklahoma Democratic Representative Kendra Horn, New Jersey Democratic Representative Andy Kim, Pennsylvania Representative Conor Lamb, Minnesota Representative Colin Peterson, Michigan Representative Elise Slotnick, and New Jersey Representative Jeff Van Drew. So I think the Democrats, along with everybody else, they're getting tired of the standoff. This partial government shutdown is now the longest one in the entire history of the United States. There have been shutdowns before, never like this, and still no end in sight. We're coming up on month number 1. We're also coming up on that day where the, ooh, that's not good. Apparently there was a weather-related plane accident in Omaha. Anyway, getting on back to things here. Here's an interesting thing. The latest polls are showing that Trump is gaining points with Latino voters during this border wall shutdown. Now, the headline says it's a shock poll. I don't find it shocking at all. I mean, my sense of it is that the legal Latino migrants, the legal Hispanics who came here through the process properly, are very angry over the illegal immigrants coming on in and basically competing for the same resources. And I think the legal Hispanic immigrants are getting tired of being sort of conflated or mixed in with the illegals. Oh, they're all Hispanics, they're all Latinos. Well, no, some of them are supposed to be here. We've got to keep that in mind. Some of them are supposed to be here. And I can imagine that they want to see that fence up there just to protect themselves and their families. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell has accused House Democrats of trying to swing elections with this major piece of legislation called For the People Act. And Mitch is saying, despite its promise that it's there to clean up voting and campaign finance, it's a power grab and a naked attempt to change the rules of American politics to benefit the Democratic Party. And he wrote this in an op-ed for the Washington Post. Interestingly enough, Donald Trump was watching William Barr's Attorney General confirmation hearing Tuesday, where Barr spoke about his close friendship with special counsel Robert Mueller. And Trump, this was apparently a complete surprise to him. And the president said he didn't realize how close they were when he nominated him. The implication being he wouldn't have nominated him. Well, doesn't anybody at the White House know how to do a thorough background check? How can you nominate somebody for one of the most powerful offices in the land and not do everything that you can do to find out if he's got any compromising connections, which in this case he clearly does? I mean, we here on the internet, we dug up Barr's connection going all the way back to Ruby Ridge and protecting Lon Horiuchi from prosecution for gunning down Vicki Weaver. So we have another man slated to go into the Office of Attorney General, the top law enforcement office in this country, who has a history of thwarting the law. We don't need another one like that. Meanwhile, over at Robert Mueller's office, he's beginning to take advantage of all the bickering and backstabbing among Trump's insiders. And according to this report in Politico, there's kind of a circular firing squad of former Trump allies and aides that are basically shooting at each other in an effort to dodge prosecution. And Mueller is going to take full advantage of that. Now, here's a story. It's been all over the place. I'm not sure I give it much credence, but the way the story is going is that President Donald Trump ordered Michael Cohen to lie to Congress about the extent of his involvement in the Moscow Trump Tower project, and that he wanted to visit Putin during 2016 campaign to help negotiations. Now, this is being sourced supposedly from two federal law enforcement officials who so far are remaining unnamed. And they're claiming Trump personally instructed Cohen to lie to Congress about when the negotiations for the tower ended. And apparently the report is saying that Trump, as well as Donald Trump Jr. and Ivanka, were receiving regular updates about the development. It was a business deal, by the way. We're not talking about national security. It's a business deal. And Trump was, apparently they were hoping the tower could bring him $300 million in profits, which would be a good reason to do that. And mind you, all of this was being done, you know, back before we really started being told we had to hate Russia. But again, we've had so many phony accusations made against Donald Trump. I'm not ready to take this one at face value, not without some confirmation. There's a lot of fake news out there. In fact, to be very honest, I pulled down the story about Ruth Bader Ginsburg having pneumonia, because its original source is this Santa Monica Observer, which is not really a reliable paper, and I can't find confirmation anywhere. So we have to be very, very careful about here. Story coming out of Information Clearinghouse: the U.S. media is intensifying a pretext for ousting Trump. The story is creeping. They're sort of pulling away from Russian collusion, probably because they can't find anything, and they're moving toward a new narrative that he is a national security risk. Just a very vague description. He's a national security risk and therefore should not be president. Boy, they are really, really out for him. Somebody did a study, the Media Research Center, and they looked at all of the news coverage about Donald Trump that aired on ABC, CBS, and NBC last year. And they found out that 90% of the stories coming from the corporate news networks were anti-Trump spin. All right, we're going to take a phone call here from Curtis in Nevada. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, Mike, we were talking about senior executive service, and I'm making the point that what the shutdown is one of the things is to eliminate this department. And you said that the seniority thing would factor in where they wouldn't be able to eliminate the most tenured people. And you remember that, right? Yesterday?
Yeah, I remember that discussion.
Hello?
Yes, you're on the air.
Okay. Oh, right. Okay. But, the point is to eliminate the department or to alter it or to diminish it. And if they do that, these people, it doesn't matter whether they have to retain them because of their seniority, that they would lose the authority that they had as under that department. That we're going to retain you, but we can transfer you to anywhere else. You see what I mean? So it doesn't matter whether they have to keep the actual employee, that they just want to eliminate that department, the SES, because that is, like we said, it was weaponized during the Obama administration, just to be able to get these deep state operatives to give them the kind of immunity so they can operate.
Yeah, it's a good old boys club. It's a good old boys club.
But no, Michael, it's beyond that. It's the globalist way to reinforce their hold on this government, and just like when they had set up the Jade Helm positioning, that once Hillary got in and a war starts or whatever happens that would cause unrest, they were set up for it. They were set up for, they were setting up for our fall under her administration. And the SES, we eliminate them, they're going to lose any cover that they had as far as, like I said, these bad players walking around like they have immunity. And they were all members of it, including some of the people that Trump has appointed. Like you say, Barr, right?
Yes. Well, again, Trump is proving to be easily manipulated, and I think somebody else suggested Barr, and Trump said, yeah, sure, why not? And he shouldn't be quite so cavalier, because he is being surrounded by people who do not like him and who want to protect the deep state. Anyway, Curtis, got to let you go. Got to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're going to go back to the phones to Mark in North Carolina. Aloha, Mark. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, what's on my mind is Trump. Boy, he's, let's be honest about it. All these people who say he knows 4D chess and this and that, it's all nuts. I don't even think the man knows how to play chess. I know how to play chess. I probably beat him in about 4 or 5 moves. But the fact of the matter is that he didn't know who Barr was. The guy was, the minute he said Barr, and I knew he was a Bush, that he was Attorney General for H.W. Bush, I knew right away, bad news.
Yeah.
A lot of bad things happened during the administration. Right away, of course he has to know Mueller. They all cook out of the same kitchen. And remember, Mueller was involved in the Whitey Bulger case.
Yeah, the Whitey Bulger case.
1980s.
Yep.
Guy's dirty. As a matter of fact, I very strongly believe he had Bulger knocked off. Okay, the way they transfer him from one facility to another. I've worked in corrections. You just don't do that. You just don't from one security facility to another. If you're going to transfer an 89-year-old inmate who's got severe medical problems, who's confined to a wheelchair, from what I understand, maybe you put him in a medical unit, but you don't put him into an even higher security facility and then leave him on his own. Yeah, I think that was a hit. That was playing. Mueller is a dirtbag. He's a dirtbag from a long way back, and so you should have figured that the guy like Barr would know Mueller and probably be friends with him. The same thing when he appointed this guy Ray after he got rid of Comey. He might as well have kept Comey. Another dirtbag from the Justice Department, another shyster lawyer. He could have gotten a guy like a real patriot like Sheriff David Clark there. He could have put him in there instead, FBI director or DHS, or whatever. Instead, what does he do? He gets rid of one shyster lawyer and puts in another. And then he's surprised. The guy doesn't know what he's doing, Mike. He does not know what he's doing.
Listening to his advisors, and they're giving him bad advice.
Yeah.
And as I've said before, the biggest single mistake Donald Trump made coming into office was to be magnanimous in victory and keep on all these holdovers from the Obama administration. And he apparently naively believed that since he was now the boss, they would be loyal to him, and they weren't.
Like, you know what they do too? They use flattery in the guy. They know he's narcissistic. So they say, oh yeah, you know, they tell him something like, I understand he met Bard at some party or something, and Bard told him to say like something like, and right away, oh, he's a great guy. He's a really great guy. I like him. I want this and that. This isn't his problem. This man does not know what he's doing. He is being taken advantage of. But, you know, I don't care about him. I care about this country. Okay?
Yes.
And that's what's happening. The country is being destroyed from within. We've got enemies within. I was at the gym before. I saw something on about the Korean guy on again. I don't care about North Korea, man. I care about this country. What's going on inside this country? And this country is being destroyed from within. That's what the enemy is. The enemy is not in North Korea. It's not in Russia. It's not in China. It's right here in the good old USA.
Okay, Mark, I'm going to have to cut you off here. We got to do a station identification break. We'll be back with hour number 2 and another phone call after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 2. And before we get back to the phones here, once again, I want to remind everybody that only the first 2 hours of our show today are live. The third hour is a rebroadcast because I have to take Claire for a doctor's appointment, and we're leaving basically an hour from now. And we couldn't get the doctor's appointment moved. It's just one of those things. I'm her Uber driver. So anyway, I'm sure that Sam has found a really interesting best of tape that you can all listen to for hour number 3, followed, of course, by John Stadmiller. All right, we're going to go back to the phones here, starting with Joe in Tennessee. Aloha, Joe. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. That Santa Monica paper that's reporting Ruth Ginsburg has pneumonia is the same one that reported her having a relapse of cancer, and they were derided for it, and it ended up they were right. So they must have some source about Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I think the best way to get an idea about how her health is look at the hysteria of the Democrats as far as impeachment of Trump. I think the Democrats realize that they're not going to win in the Senate when he nominates Barrett, which he's going to do.
Yes.
And I think their tactic is to say, well, an impeached president or a president under impeachment proceedings cannot nominate a Supreme Court justice. That can't happen. We have to have this whole impeachment thing settled before the president can name his nominee. I think that's why you're seeing all these, phony stories that, that one BuzzFeed just put out about Cohen. And the timing, I have a feeling she's either dead or living on machines right now. And this is their only tactic because Trump, and I said that with this last election, the Democrats are going around acting like, they won and how great of a big thing it was, when actually I've said all along that Trump really, by keeping the Senate and gaining seats, and meanwhile getting rid of the flakes and the others, that the corkers, he's solidified his position in the Senate for his nominees. And really, the only game the Democrats have is the impeachment game on Trump, and Ginsburg is probably on death's door as we speak. So it should really be interesting. But you can actually see them ratcheting up the stories on Trump, the hysteria about Trump, and you got to kind of enjoy the show. I mean, that's basically where we're at with Trump. I mean, this thing he did with canceling that flight was the best thing one of the better things I've seen him do. And you have to, as much as people complain about Trump, What other president would have done something like that? The Bush never would have. Romney never would have. No Republican in there, any other Republican candidate I can think of would ever have the moxie to do what he did to Pelosi and show her who the boss really is. And I'm happy about that. I think she needed to have her nose rubbed in it, because she's been walking around like she's a co-equal, to President Trump. And she's not.
Actually
and she's
stated
learn that when.
She's actually stated in an interview in the corporate media that the Constitution says the Speaker of the House is the equal to the President. And no, Nancy, the Constitution doesn't actually say that, because I got that right here.
No, and then the other thing is she's going to find out when he, refills the Supreme Court. She's going to find out how powerless she really is. And I think that maybe that's starting to dawn on her. And as a woman, she'll probably get more hysterical. So this is going to be, like, if you're into it for the world wrestling type aspects of politics, Trump is great. And Pelosi is actually pretty good as the foil for him. So, enjoy. The other thing I wanted to comment quickly about is the shutdown. I'm enjoying the shutdown. And I think the rest of America, except maybe in Washington, I watch these people hysterical on TV. They're all from Washington, but everybody outside of Washington could give a damn. I had a friend. He came through the airport. No customs. He came from down in South America. Just right through in Kennedy. No customs. Just went right through.
Oh.
And they're like, yeah, they're not showing up.
I wonder how many drug smugglers are listening to this show.
Well, I don't care. I'm a libertarian. I maybe bring the price of them down, I mean, hey, guys, not even a dog walking around. So, but hey, I remember, what was it, that Thanksgiving a few years ago when they just said, give everybody a break, and they didn't even wave everybody through TSA. I mean, it's all based on a fallacy, that old 9/11 lie. So, what the hell? In the same way with the drugs, you keep the drug prices up. So what, the CIA can make more money to overthrow our government? So yeah, leave it. Let's have it. Forget the customs. They just bust your balls anyway. Excuse my French.
Yes.
But so once again, I love the way everything's being highlighted and exposed with Trump. I know people say this about him and that about him, but boy, if you want to talk about a guy that it like shines the light on everything, and not that he's that brilliant about it, it just seems to be like they just throw themselves. He's driving them crazy. You got to give him that.
Yes.
He's just driving them crazy. And they're my enemy. So I like to see my enemy driven crazy. So,
the problem is that crazy people and desperate people, they do desperate things. And, I'm concerned that we're reaching the point right now where the deep state is going to actually try and take Trump out. And maybe that was...
Well, we're not going to let them... We're not going to let I don't think the American people, I know I'm not, if they take Trump out, it's war. It's war. They better send a helicopter to my house. And I know who to go. I think most of us know who to hold responsible. If they think they're going to pull a Kennedy on Trump, they got another thing coming. I think they know they can't. I think they know the American people will go ape, if they touch a hair on his head. You want to beat them, do it, the political process. If they resort to violence, there's going to be no more JFKs. There's going to be no more 9/11s. There's a lot of us out there that are just going to, take the law into our own hands, because there is no law if they do that. There is no law. If they do that, there's going to be total no law. Who do you have to answer to?
Yeah.
They have no legitimacy. They will have no legitimacy at all. And
well, frankly, I think this government lost all legitimacy years ago. And I'm not really enjoying the spectacle of Trump and Pelosi going at each other. I'm sure it has some entertainment value. I'm just seriously concerned about the damage to the country as a whole that is taking place while Trump and Pelosi are battling it out. Bolton and Pompeo are running our war agenda. The military-industrial complex is bleeding us for even more money for weapons that we hope will never actually be used. Anyway, Joe, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go. We're going to do a shout out to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining the network. And I'm going to repeat my little announcement for the on-air affiliates. Only the first 2 hours of today's show are live. The third is a repeat owing to a medical appointment that could not be rescheduled. Going on back to the phones, Al in Canada, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. Your last caller, Joe. You know, I'm in absolute agreement with him. I don't even live in the United States, and I mean, the people that live in the United States are always fed a constant barrage of lies and deception, and all of this stuff involving very certain people. It's all come to light. It's all out there. I don't, like I said to you, Donald Trump is not stupid. He can't be stupid. He's filthy rich. He built a lot of good stuff.
There's, you know,
the guy can't be an idiot.
You know, first of all, you know, he was born into a privileged life, and he's been bankrupt more than a few times. So I don't know that you should just equate the idea of being incredibly rich with being incredibly smart. I mean, look at some of the stuff that comes out of Nancy Pelosi's mouth, and she's worth $190 million.
True. But, you know, like, for myself, you know why I'm not rich, Mike? I don't care about that. I really don't. I never did. I never really wanted to be a rich guy. I just wanted to be happy and do what I want to do.
Yes.
But, you know, well, I'm sure you can relate to that. A lot of people can. But, like I said earlier, all of these people that no one heard of, really, it's all out there. All these holdovers and everything else, it's all out there now. Everyone can see what they're doing. And if you know, I don't know about you, but one of my favorite things to do is to read the comments, if there are some, in news sites. And it gives you a really good idea sometimes of how people are really thinking. Because, I mean, you can spot the trolls right away, and you know what I'm talking about. People that are paid to be there. It's like Joe said, you know, he still has hope for the United States. And, you know, I remember Ross Perot. I think Ross Perot would have probably done the same thing that Donald Trump is doing. I mean, the guy's facing an uphill battle. He's against the wall trying to push it away. And he's constantly being beaten back, like what with the deep state, exactly what, you know, you and a lot of other people are saying. The deep state hates this guy.
Yes.
Why? Why do they hate him?
Well, they hate him because he derailed their plans to install. They hate him because he derailed their plans to install Hillary Clinton. They hate him because he's unreliable. He can't be relied on to do what he's told. Now, so far, they seem to have succeeded controlling him, except for that border wall. And maybe that's another reason why the Democrats, or as somebody just emailed me, the hysterocrats, are trying so hard to block that. They're trying to deny Donald Trump any kind of a success or victory going into 2020. It's another reminder. You are not really in charge. You get to sit in that nice Oval Office, but you are not really running the country. Other forces are.
Well, you know, it is as true as that may seem, that corporation that is the United States of America does have a leader, and that leader is President Donald Trump. They better get used to it, because I have a feeling, Mike, he's not going anywhere for a while yet. Even if it's only another 2 years, the damage that he caused all these people is irreparable. They're all out in the open now. Look at Pelosi. Like you said, she wants to go on vacation again. Come on. Get real.
She was calling it a fact-finding trip, and
yes. Well,
which is what they call vacations.
Well, anyways, Mike, you know, I still stay skeptical, but, you know, I'm still holding out. I'm holding out because, you know, I'm getting up there too, and it'd be nice to see, you know, people win once in a while. It's always nice to see that. Thanks, Mike, for having me on.
It would be very, very nice. Donald Trump keeps making the same mistakes over and over and over again. He's clearly allowing his advisors to steer him, and his advisors are steering him basically into the neocon agenda. I think Donald Trump, with his announcement of a pullout from Syria and Afghanistan, it doesn't seem to be happening. And they're trying to pretend like, oh, it was never really a real thing anyway. But that's a major failure, which shows me that he is a weak leader. He can't stick to his guns on these things. He can be talked out of stuff. And that's a very, very dangerous thing. One requirement that we have to have in a president is the courage of their convictions. We don't want them to be reckless. We don't want them to be authoritarian. But we expect them to make a good decision and then stick with it. Okay, let's go back to the phones here. Art from Off the Grid, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, I'm kind of curious here. I was reading an article earlier today, and it's talking about this report we expect due no later than the 17th of February on whether or not, and this, the way the article words it is, Trump directed the Commerce Department to investigate whether auto imports pose a threat to national security with a due date no later than February 17th of this year. And if they determine that there is a national security interest, it could result in $200 billion worth of additional tariffs on import or on automotive imports. Now, here's my question, and maybe I'm just too much of a dumb, ignorant redneck to figure this out, but how is we have virtually like almost no automotive manufacturing left in this country. We have very little manufacturing of any kind left in this country. We don't produce anything except welfare recipients, food stamp recipients, more illegal immigration, more wars, more bombs, more killing, more death, destruction, and absolute stupidity. How is this not a national emergency when we talk about our very economic survival? How is this not a national security issue?
Well, I'm in agreement with you, and I know what the Commerce Department is going to come on back and say is look at all those overflow lots at the car dealerships. Look at all the overflow lots at the automobile plants. We do have some automobile plants here in the United States. One of them is being run by Mercedes-Benz, which is a surprise. They can't sell the cars. And so we have more cars than car customers, and I'm sure the Commerce Department is going to come on out and recommend that foreign-produced cars have a stiff tariff on them when they are imported into the United States.
I am absolutely down with tariffs, absolutely. But, you know, here's the thing, and I don't think people really think about it. I mean, either they don't think about it or they're outright lying or deluding themselves. Because, yeah, while there is, I will not deny that there is an overflow of vehicles on these lots and whatever. But you know what? If we brought back automotive manufacturing here in the country and stopped all the imports, if we brought back manufacturing here in the country and stopped with all the imports of radios and TVs and bicycles and this and that and the other thing, and actually brought back manufacturing here, revived our steel industry, you know what? People would be able to afford to buy those cars that they can't currently afford now, which is causing the overflow.
Makes sense.
Am I, like, crazy for thinking this way?
No, you're not crazy at all. I mean, we are the inheritors of some going on 4 decades of very bad decision-making regarding the nation's economy. And experts were shouting the warning that our manufacturing was in decline, you know, back in the 1980s. And the part of the problem was, of course, we'd raised a generation of corporate executives who came out of those MBA programs who never had an emotional connection with the actual process of manufacturing. And so their idea was, well, let's just send the manufacturing over to someplace else where they don't mind getting their hands dirty. And they lobbied government to make that easier. There were even tax incentives for offshoring. And it was good for business, and corporations are making more money. Americans are being put out of work. And rather than reverse that and treat our manufacturing as a national resource that should be protected and guided, the U.S. government invented what they called the service economy, which was this idea that we could make the nation prosperous by doing each other's laundry for a fee. And it certainly opened up new taxation opportunities for the government, which made them happy, but it didn't bring new wealth into the country. And Americans' decline in standard of living really began to deteriorate after that.
Yeah, I mean, it's just crazy. Anyway, I wanted to get your thoughts on that and see if if maybe there was something wrong with my logic. Thanks, Mike. Have a great one.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go, and the phone lines are open. All right, apparently the White House is considering hitting Venezuela with an oil embargo. The National Security Council has told some U.S. refiners that sanctions on Venezuelan crude exports are under consideration. And the effort would likely focus on the roughly 500,000 barrels per day of crude that Venezuela currently exports to the United States. So it's another hammer blow to Venezuela. The U.S. really wants to get in there. Okay, we're going to take another break for commercials. We will be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're talking about the economic news. Over in Malaysia, as you know, there's this big stink over the 1MDB scandal. And apparently the Malaysian government has extended an offer to Goldman Sachs CEO David Solomon. Apparently, Solomon made a statement trying to deflect the blame away. But according to Bloomberg, Malaysian Finance Minister Lim Guan Eng told reporters that Malaysian prosecutors might consider dropping the criminal charges against the bank for a small fee of $7.5 billion, which I'm sure Goldman Sachs has somewhere in there. Okay, now, poor Tesla. Tesla is having to recall 14,000 Model S vehicles produced between 2014 and 2016 over defective airbags that could blow up and send shrapnel into the driver's and front seat passenger faces. Now, the measure is part of an industry-wide recall of Takata airbags, whose safety woes have been plaguing the automotive industry going all the way back to 2013. Now, Takata itself, because of all the lawsuits, went bankrupt in 2017 and was taken over by car parts maker Key Safety Systems. So apparently the air cylinder or the pyrotechnic charge, or however these things actually work, was simply too powerful, and the airbags would actually burst. Apparently, Tesla is having to let go 3,000 workers, that's about 7% of their workforce, amid poor profits and the Model 3 production challenges. And so, yeah, Tesla's having a hard time. Okay, already they're gearing up for 2020. Georgia Democrat Stacey Abrams is considering a possible run for the Senate in 2020. And she's out there openly saying that she has no problem with non-citizens voting. Well, she's a Democrat, and the Democrats know the more non-citizens vote, the more likely they are to win their elections. But it's just out there in your face. Yeah, bring in all these illegal immigrants, give them free stuff, let them vote. They're really trying to change the demographics of this nation. They're taking the United States, which used to be a first world developed nation, and they're driving it back down to the third world. Same thing all over Europe. All these third world people are pouring on in, and rather than decide to live in the first world, they're behaving exactly like they did in their home countries. And there was a reason their home countries were the mess they are, is because of these people. And now they've come to Europe and the United States and they're making the mess here. William Hague is predicting chaos over Brexit could force a general election within weeks amid the stalemate in Parliament. And apparently the former Tory leader was doing a briefing for businessmen in the City of London in the aftermath of the crushing defeat of Theresa May's Brexit deal, which wasn't a deal. As Nigel Farage said, it was more of a surrender note here. Now, Lord Hague correctly predicted the last snap election in 2017 and warned that the chances of another are currently being underplayed. I think that would be a good thing if they had a snap election, because everybody they've got in the parliament right now, they're trying to find some way by hook or by crook to end Brexit, to get rid of it or put it off. Now, the Yellow Vests are starting to mobilize in Great Britain. And one Yellow Vest protester was being interviewed by Sputnik, and he says, the Yellow Vests want to reclaim Great Britain. We don't want to be part of the federal European superstate that's going to erode our rights and take away democracy. So apparently they had a Yellow Vest demonstration on the streets of London earlier today. And apparently the threat of a no-deal Brexit is being taken seriously because Britain's Defense Ministry has ordered Army reservists to be placed on standby in case they're needed to quell potential unrest from a no-deal Brexit. Now, Theresa May has been accused of trying to impose her deal with all this doomsday predictions in the past, that all these horrible things are going to go wrong. But the Defense Ministry is saying, we're going to put these people on standby so they can be called up rapidly. And the standby is going to extend from February 10th, 2019 to February 9th, 2020. Over in France, more than 84,000 people took part in protests in Paris, Marseille, Bordeaux, Lyon, Strasbourg, and other French cities. And apparently protesters attempted to storm City Hall again. This is from Russia Today here. Now, Emmanuel Macron, he's definitely... Oh, we got to take a break for commercials. All right, we'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. So, Francis Emmanuel Macron is a globalist. And right now, he's dealing with the Yellow Vest protests in his country, which are being driven in large part by French frustration with the open borders migrants, along with the economic realities there. But Macron is still got time to go on out and wag his big stick at the other European Union member countries, saying that they will be punished financially if they do not accept migrants. Now, his speech was aimed at the Eastern European countries who have consistently refused to take in Middle Eastern and African migrants, like Hungary, Poland, and Slovakia. Now, getting on back to the Yellow Vest protests, a former Green member of the European Parliament, Mr. Cohn-Bendit, was saying that if the Yellow Vests succeed in driving Macron out, that he could be replaced by a French army general. And basically, the reasoning is that every time there's a social crisis, it always goes to the right, never to the left. Macron continued his tirade against Poland and Hungary, screaming that their governments are lying to their people. They're comparing Brussels with Moscow in the ancient Soviet times. So he's just out there on a rant, and I guess he's feeling the pressure here. Now, I think it was back in November, Angela Merkel literally got up and made a speech at the Konrad Adenauer Foundation in Berlin, in which she stated, Nation states must today be prepared to give up their sovereignty. In other words, become part of the global government. That's what she's pushing for. Now, over in the German army, somebody leaked a military report where apparently Germany's top military planners believe the European Union could actually break up by 2040. And they're looking at the rise of these Eurosceptic parties across Europe, which are gaining strength. They're looking at the pushback to the open borders place. Yeah, I don't think the EU is going to last. And I don't think it's even going to last to 2040. I think it could be gone in 2 years. Croatia has now announced they will not sign the UN Migration Pact, joining the United States, Hungary, and Austria. And Croatian President Kolinda Grabar-Kitarovic will not sign that, and basically saying, we got to protect our borders. That's absolutely right. Down in Egypt, President al-Sisi spoke at a forum where he just came on out in plain language saying migration is not a human right. If you go to another country, you must follow their laws and culture. If not, don't go there. Now, last November, al-Sisi attended the World Youth Forum in Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt. He was asked how he sees the fact that several European countries are now closing the door to those who want to migrate to Europe. And al-Sisi replied, instead of asking me why Europe closes the door to us, you should ask why people in Afghanistan don't take better care of their country. And the same applies to Pakistan, Egypt, Syria, Libya, Iraq, Yemen, and Somalia. These are people who basically sat around and let their country rot away. And instead of working to try and rebuild it and fix it, we'll just go to Europe now. George Soros says it's okay. And we'll go up there and we'll have a lot of fun and we'll rape a lot of women and we'll steal a lot of stuff and live off welfare, and it'll be a lot of fun here. All right, so now we want to talk about Marcia Hashemi. She is an American Iranian. She is a TV anchor for Iran's English language station Press TV. And she's in the process of filming a documentary on Black Lives Matter. And she was basically arrested at the St. Louis airport. And she's been taken to Washington, D.C. And apparently she's already in court. And nobody's saying anything. The FBI is refusing to discuss why she's being detained. The only thing anybody has said is she's a material witness in a case. A material witness is something that they use when they want to lock you up, but they don't really have a crime. But a lot of people are wondering what's going on. And looking at all the other recent arrests of that Huawei CEO in Canada, the Canadians arrested in China, the American arrested for spying in Russia. It's almost like countries have gone back to the old model of hostage taking, leading to prisoner swaps. And it's like you need to remember that that was one of the things the United Nations was created to avoid. Getting on back to Great Britain, apparently the electronic intifada has been looking at allegations of anti-Semitism. As you know, the British media has been claiming there's an anti-Semitism crisis in Britain's Labour Party, and the reporting has been characterized by dishonesty, exaggeration, outright fabrication. And the target of this manufactured crisis is Jeremy Corbyn and the wider Palestine Solidarity Movement. But this investigation by the Electronic Intifada has documented multiple fake Twitter profiles posing as Corbyn supporters who've been posting virulent anti-Semitism to his Twitter feed. And their analysis is that the accounts share sufficient similarities to indicate that the same person or small group is running them all, and they're looking for more of them. Now, without police enforcement or a court case, it's impossible to know who's doing it. But this is getting to be a very common trick. It's another reason why I stopped using social media. Because somebody will sign onto social media, they'll create a new account in a phony name, they'll become one of your followers, and then they just start posting all kinds of terrible stuff to the Twitter feed. And, oh, Rivero's Twitter feed, it's a haven for anti-Semites. And they're the ones who are posting the anti-Semitic stuff. It's a fraud. It's a lie here. Okay, the Drug Enforcement Agency has a new black eye. In fact, it's one of the biggest black eyes in the history of the DEA. And apparently it turns out that Jose Irizarry, who was a once heralded DEA agent, has been arrested. He's accused of conspiring with another informant to launder more than $7 million in drug money, sometimes using an underground network called the Black Market Peso Exchange. And as you know, the DEA has been plagued with scandals over the last few years. So apparently this guy was rolling in the dough, and he hosted yacht parties with hookers. I wonder if the partial shutdown has affected the DEA here. Alrighty. Hyo Suk George lived legally in the United States for nearly 20 years before she voted in her first election, coaxed to cast her ballot by an enthusiastic town council member at church. She's a green card holder. So to register, she presented a green card, social security number, and driver's license, which was proof enough for the elections officials in Columbus County, then voted in 2008, 2010, and 2016. But on Tuesday, George faced charges of illegal voting from the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. And apparently the judge basically chastised the elections board for letting things get out of control here. And they let George go with a $100 fine. All right, here's an interesting little story. This is out of Activist Post. And it's talking about these automated content monitoring systems on computers. And it starts off mentioning that last year, YouTube's Content ID system, this is the system that looks for copyright infringement, and it flagged Sebastian Tomczak's video 5 times for copyright infringement. The video wasn't a supercut of Marvel Comics or the latest Girl Talk mashup. It was 10 hours of machine-generated static. That's it. 10 hours of static, and YouTube's Content ID system said it might be copyright infringement. Apparently, Content ID even flagged a 1-hour video of a cat purring as a likely infringement. I think they have that sensitivity way, way too high. Over in Zimbabwe, where they're dealing with violent protests, Zimbabwe is now blocking Facebook, Twitter, and WhatsApp messaging as part of the crackdown on the protests. Apparently, at least 12 people have been killed, many more beaten and tortured by security forces this week. The Zimbabwe Human Rights NGO Forum accused the authorities of cutting off the internet to mask the massive human rights violations. And the protests were sparked by a sharp rise in the price of fuel. Boy, that seems to be going around all over the place here. If you are a Chrome user, you need to be careful. Apparently, there is a year-old Chrome extension which steals credit card data. And apparently, the way it gets onto your browser is there'll be a pop-up that says, you don't have Flash installed, use this Chrome extension instead, or something to that effect. And so unsuspecting users click on those links. It triggers an automated redirect to the malicious extension. Now, not too long ago, there was a big stink where people staying at an Airbnb room had discovered a hidden camera aimed at their bed, and the story went out and it got viral. And apparently now more and more people are checking their Airbnb rooms, and they're finding lots of cameras. And apparently a lot of the hosts are hiding security cameras in the rooms, at least that's what they're calling them. And they're hiding them in the bathrooms and the bedrooms. Now, you can learn how to spot these cameras. There are even little devices that you can get on eBay that you hold over your eye, and it flashes a light beam out into the room, and it will immediately make any lenses out there glow. So you might want to get one of those if you're concerned about your privacy here. Over at Monsanto and Bayer, or Monsanto Bayer, or Bear Santo, whatever they're going to call themselves, they're now working on a project to genome edit fruits and more. They want to patent genetically modified or GMO varieties of fruits using controversial gene editing. Now, the beauty of this for Monsanto is that in the USA, according to a ruling by the Department of Agriculture, gene-edited agriculture needs no special independent testing. Now, that strikes me as a very, very dangerous situation. You've changed the genes. You've changed the protein expression. Yeah, there's got to be testing. This country has gone totally, totally fascist. Okay, massive blizzard impacting the California mountains. Above 5,000 feet, the snow is being measured in feet. Multiple feet, they're saying as much as 100 inches of snow are possible. And we talked about Canada being cold yesterday. Connecticut is moving to have climate change education mandated in elementary school. They're the first state to mandate it. I'm sure there will be others to just convince everybody, oh yes, the world is getting warmer and you are to blame, and you will grow up and you will let the government tell you how to live so we can save planet Earth from all you icky-poo human beings here. It's propagandizing our kids here. I can understand why so many parents want to homeschool. Things to be careful of when you're out there dealing with the snow, and there was a lot of snow. This happened in Petersburg, Kentucky, and there was a driver driving along, and there was a giant snowman. A giant snowman in the yard of Corey Lutz. So this driver just decided he was going to sideswipe the snowman and knock it down. Kind of a cruel thing to do. Got a very rude awakening, because apparently the reason the snowman was standing despite its size is it was built around a giant tree trunk that was inside. Oopsie. I wonder if Farmers Insurance is going to cover that one here. Okay, we talked about this before. Never mess with a franchise. Over at BBC, this last season of Doctor Who did not do very well with a female doctor. They alienated a lot of their base. We're hearing all this talk about a tranny James Bond for the next movie of that franchise. And there is a new Ghostbusters coming on out. Now, Jason Reitman, who's the son of the original director Ivan Reitman, has been given the green light. There's already a trailer out, so cameras are rolling on this. And basically, this film picks up the narrative of the 1980s classic. No, the female cast is not going to be there. They're basically going to have some kind of a handoff from the obviously aging original cast to a new, younger, all-male group. So I wish them a lot of luck. But Sonia is saying it was an economic disaster. All right, we'll be right back after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. And a reminder to everybody, this is the last segment of today's live broadcast. The next hour is going to be a replay of something wonderful, I'm sure, followed by John Stadmiller. So getting on back to the news here. A few weeks ago, there was a story where the Hubble Space Telescope's main camera wasn't working, and ground engineers were trying to fix it and fix it and fix it. Finally, in desperation, they just shut the whole system down, waited a bit, and turned it back on again, and that worked. The reset fixed Hubble Space Telescope's main camera. I'm glad they're keeping that in service. I know they were talking about ditching it in light of some of these newer telescopes that are out there, or at least let some university take it over. That would be really kind of good. All right, let's get some gun stories in here. Story coming out of Government Slaves talking about how more and more credit card companies, of course, you know they're watching your buying habits and selling that information. But apparently, some credit card companies are blocking purchases for ideological reasons. And one of the biggest is how credit card companies are starting to block firearms purchases. And they're basically taking it upon themselves to be Second Amendment censors, which I think is very inappropriate. But of course, the left is out there cheering, yes, anything to get the guns, anything to stop the mass shootings. And so that's pretty tacky. Up in Oregon, they're getting ready to enact gun laws that are so strict that the only firearms you could own would be the ones Davy Crockett used. In other words, they want to basically outlaw everything. And they want to ban any rifle with a detachable magazine that held more than 10 rounds. There is no grandfather clause. Current owners would have to sell them to an FFL dealer, transfer them out of state, turn them over to police, or destroy them. And so apparently a proposed law in the legislature would make Oregon's gun regulations one of the strictest in the country. Not only does it include a permit to purchase, but a limit of how much ammunition you can buy a month, plus a ban on magazines that hold more than 5 rounds. People, we are being disarmed. They understand. We're angry. We're very angry. And there are people out there, you know, who might think about it's time to rise up. We had a caller earlier in the show on that. I disagree with that myself. I disagree here. I've been saying all along that this push to create a global government created a political climate conducive to a global revolution, and apparently I'm not the only person to say that. Bob Moriarty is out there with an article out of 321 Gold saying that the very first worldwide revolution has begun. So better get on out there and get your yellow vests. There's the music time for me to get out of here and take Claire to the doctors. So stay tuned, and we'll be back on Monday.